When you are thinking about assessing or evaluating the financial attractiveness of an idea or a project, it is useful to ask a variety of questions. How long will it take for the project to recoup its initial investment? How much money will the project make? And of course, what is the rate of return on the project? This third question is sometimes called the ROI, return on investment. It can also be called the project's IRR, or internal rate of return. This is a very common metric because it is easy to understand and because once you know the project's ROI, it's very useful to compare against the cost of investing. For example, say you have a project with an initial investment of $10,000. It's expected to throw off $12,000 a year from today, so the project's ROI is 20%. You get this by taking the ending value minus the beginning value and then dividing by the beginning value. In this case, 12,000 minus 10,000 equals 2,000, divided by the 10,000 gives you 0.2 or 20%. It's an intuitive metric, and it's easy to then compare against what an investor expects or requires. If an investor who provides you with the initial 10,000 requires a return of, say, 15%, then since the project returns 20%, you're all set. If the investor requires a rate of return of, say, 25%, then the project is going to fall short. There are a few issues when you try to implement this metric in practice. For example, if the project occurs over multiple years, then it is harder to estimate the ROI, which is typically provided as an annual return. Say our initial investment is $10,000. Then the project earns $3,000 the first year, $2,000 the second year, and $11,000 the third year. What is the project's average annual ROI? You can't just look at it and guess and get it right. To get the exact answer, you need to either use a financial or online calculator, search for IRR calculator, or use the equals IRR function in Excel. It's not hard to find, just don't try using algebra. For our example, this project's average annual IRR is 21%. The project's IRR, aka ROI, is one of the most common and useful metrics that's used to assess the financial viability of a project, but it does have a couple of issues. First, because of the math underlying the metric, there's the slight possibility that there are multiple project IRRs. This will only happen if the cash flows change signs multiple times. For example, say you're digging a mine to search for a precious metal. It costs $500,000 to conduct the dig, then the mine provides you with $200,000 per year inflows for 5 years, then it will cost you $100,000 in year 6 to clean it up. So the cash flows are negative, then positive for 5 years, then negative again. This project will actually have two IRRs, positive 26% and negative 66%. Which one is right? Technically, they both are. So this is now confusing. Know that this will only happen in the unusual circumstance with weird cash flows, but it can happen, and if it does, you cannot use this measure. It's not something to worry about, but it's something to be aware of. A more significant potential issue is that the IRR suffers from something called a scale problem. Say you have two projects. The first project you invest $1,000 and it gives you back $1,200 in a year. So it has an IRR of 20%. The second project you invest only $100 and it gives you back $130 in a year, so it has an IRR of 30%. If you have to choose one project or the other, then the second project has the higher IRR, 30% versus 20%. But the first project earns $200 and the second one earns only $30. So on a smaller initial investment, the IRR can look comparatively large. An investor will look at the money in their pocket, so the IRR can distort the return from smaller projects. At the end of the day, these are fairly unusual circumstances, and you should have confidence in using a project's IRR or ROI to give you a sense for how a project is expected to perform.